Organization and biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. Thank you for standing with us.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Live radio show here, people, for the next hour and 24 and a half minutes. And joining me in studio is Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Tim.
Chris Woodward.
Good morning.
And in Kansas City, KS, is our good friend Ray Pritchard. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Tim. How you doing today?
Everything's good on this Thursday. So far, weather report from Kansas City. We always get that from you. What is that?
Bright and sunny and going to be 65 this afternoon.
Wow.
Hey.
Hey.
Well, that's awesome, man. I think we're 62 here in Tupelo today with some sunshine. Is that right, Fred?
It's sunny out there right now. Yeah, pretty nice.
Fred, an update from 5 feet of snow, Nova Scotia.
Well, the plows are doing their job. And,
they are?
And yes, people are finally digging out. But my goodness, it's going to be weeks. Ray, yesterday on the program, I was giving a debriefing on 5 feet of snow in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia.
That's Fred's hometown.
5 feet. Whoa.
5 feet. 3 days nonstop blizzard. Worst in 20 years. But
you talked to some family back there?
Talked to some family, and they are digging out. The grocery stores are open again, and people are getting around. So very thankful for that. But, boy, it was tough 4 or 5 days.
Well, I tell you, if 5 feet of snow ever hit Tupelo, well, first of all, if that ever happened, it would be the end of the global warming movement. Second of all, it would be like a town frozen in time, where they would be doing excavations here in about 100
right.
years going, here's what happened to these people. Like Pompeii.
Right, like Pompeii with the volcano hit.
Here's where this family was. You can see what happened to them with the 5
That's
people
right.
know him. As you can see, they were, and the grocery stores were completely out of something they call milk.
Yes, bread and milk gone.
Huh? We may die of cold, but by golly, we're going to have cold. We're going to have cereal.
Right.
I don't remember. I worked in a few TV markets before I started here in radio. And I don't remember which place it was, and I don't remember the individual's name. But the TV station I worked for interviewed kind of a man on the street talking to people during a time of cold weather and no electricity. And there was an individual who was fretting. She didn't know what to do with her groceries since it was cold outside and she didn't have any electricity. I kid you not.
Oh,
It was like freezing. Like you could put your bread and milk
Right,
whatever outside and be
right.
totally fine. Yes.
bless her.
Yes.
Just bless her. All right, fellas, before we get to the news of the day, I just wanted you guys to know that if you're looking for a private jet, Taylor Swift's got one to sell you. Okay,
Yes.
she's selling one of her I guess she has two. I know she has at least 2 private jets, but she's getting rid of one. So she's selling one of her private jets. There's some fella, a young man, who tracks celebrities and rich people, and shows where their planes go.
Yes. To show their climate hypocrisy.
Is that why he does that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, many of the people sounding the alarm over what they call man-made climate change are the ones contributing to the, and I'm using air quotes, problem the most.
Why is Taylor Swift, is she a climate activist?
She has warned many times. She's put things out there saying, we need to do better about emissions and the climate, to which that individual and others have said, well, you're jet setting all over the world.
That is true. So don't talk to me about climate change if you're going to fly on a private jet.
Bernie Sanders is one of the biggest violators. Now, he claims that he buys what are called carbon offsets, which
care.
people on the right would tell you it amounts to nothing.
That's nothing. You're still emitting the carbon, the vast amounts of carbon emissions, right?
Right.
So you're going to plant 2 pine trees and call it even? Is that what they say?
Basically, yeah.
That
Bernie got
that
in
didn't
trouble.
work.
When he ran for president this last time, back in early 2020, a lot of people were upset with him because he was doing private planes to travel around.
Anyway, just throwing that out there in case somebody's looking for a private jet. Taylor Swift's got one on the market.
You travel a lot.
Listen, I'll put down. I'll go $500, $750, even to $1,000.
Sold to the man in Kansas City.
You can paint Peachy Keen on the side of it.
I couldn't even afford 1 day of rental.
No,
right?
you couldn't.
For a jet. Goodness
You have to
gracious.
sell your house.
That's right. Sell everything I've ever had or thought about. That.
I have ridden. Is that what you call it? Flown, ridden
Flown? Yeah.
on private jets. I'm trying to think how many times. At least 3 times, 2 or 3 times, with a fella who was obviously very wealthy. And I'm just going to tell you something. You can get used to that real
Oh,
quick.
it's good.
You didn't suffer.
Have you ridden on a private jet?
No,
Ray?
no. I just see it in these movies and stuff. It looks like the way to go.
Oh yeah. Have you ever ridden on a private jet?
No,
Not a private plane, but I'm talking about jet engines.
No, my youngest daughter, though, worked as a nanny back many years ago for a very wealthy family in Texas. And they would take her with them when they flew in their private jet to New York and places like that.
Yeah. You can get there. You can get wherever you want to go pretty quick, and you can get home pretty quick.
Yeah.
But when you don't have to mess with airports.
Yeah.
And sit beside.
So how much, do we know how much Taylor Swift wants for her private jet?
Well,
maybe we could take up an offering among 4 or 5 of us.
Yeah, we might be able to rent it for a day if we do that.
I think it's $14 million.
40 million.
Is
Chris,
that-
come on.
Is that all?
That's it.
Taylor Swift sells one of her $40 million private jets amid threats to sue college student who tracks her emissions. So
$40 million.
Hey,
Wow.
she makes, according to a Bloomberg story I just found, $13 million a night on her tour. So she's gotta make ends meet.
Listen, I was talking to this with somebody about her. Now I'm not. I don't know. I couldn't because I don't know any of her songs. I mean, I've heard. Obviously, if you've been in this world, you've heard a few. But I couldn't tell you the name of them or anything like that. But she is wildly popular.
She is.
And I will say this: as far as her status goes in history, I was thinking about this. As far as solo artist, all right, she's in the Elvis, Michael Jackson, Elton John stratosphere right now.
Wow.
She is really. I mean, I don't endorse or condemn her music because I don't know. What I understand, basically, it's clean, right? It's about clean music. I don't know much about it other than that. Ray,
The rest of us are keeping silent
because you don't know either.
We don't know her music either.
Yeah.
I know one song she's done, and it was one of her early ones. "You Belong with Me." That's the only one.
Yeah,
I
she was
know.
a country music. She got her start in country music,
Yeah.
and then she went on to pop music. And anyway, now she's.
I'm doing an exhaustive and very
she's
investigative
everywhere.
search to figure out where she ranks in terms of the biggest selling artists.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, biggest selling, but I'm just saying her celebrity status has reached the level worldwide has reached the level of those people I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Pretty phenomenal. From a small town girl from Pennsylvania. All right, you're listening to today's issues on American Family Radio. Chris, what's going on?
Well, happening right now at the U.S. Supreme Court, justices are hearing arguments in a case known as Trump v. Anderson. At issue is whether the Colorado Supreme Court erred in ordering former President Donald Trump excluded from the 2024 presidential primary ballot. That primary coming up next month, by the way. 9 justices are supposedly going to take all these arguments into account today and make a decision before the primary in March that I just mentioned. The arguments, we don't have any audio from the justices. It is very dense. It's very technical.
They're dense.
Well, it's very heavy. It's not like,
Chris.
Is Colorado wrong? Is Colorado right? How do you agree? It's none of that. It's like arguing over language and terminology and phraseology and what founders meant and all that other stuff. But this is the case that began many months ago when Colorado's Secretary of State, who is a Democrat, and many other Democrats got behind this idea that Trump shouldn't be on the ballot because they say he committed, quote, insurrection based on his actions on January 6, 2021. I do have some audio from a Colorado radio personality by the name of Jeff Hunt, who talked to us yesterday about this case going on this morning. It's clip 2.
Colorado has an unfortunate track record of sending unconstitutional cases to the U.S. Supreme Court, whether it's Jack Phillips or Lori Smith, but now the effort to keep Trump off the ballot, I think this is direct election interference, primarily by Democrats in the state of Colorado. While Republicans are some of the names signed on to this ballot, it's primarily being led by Democrats, and it's being promoted and argued for by a very progressive Secretary of State. And from my opinion, this is direct election interference. He has every right to be on that ballot. He's been chosen by the people of Colorado, or likely to be chosen by the people of Colorado to be the Republican nominee. And in many ways, this is an effort to disenfranchise Republican voters.
All right. I think my guess is the Supreme Court's going to rule you can't remove him being Trump from the ballot. I think that's the way it's going to go. That's be my,
Yeah, I think
my prediction. Will they'll make an announcement pretty quick, won't they?
they have to.
Yeah.
They have to on this because
This is an emergency appeal.
It is, because Colorado's primary is coming up in just 2-3 weeks. I listened to some of the arguments this morning. My guess at this point is going to be a 6-3 decision with Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson voting against the arguments being put forward by Trump lawyers. As Chris said, the arguments are very technical, but one of the things, they're using Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which deals with somebody who has caused an insurrection can't run for president. One of the arguments that's being used is that that specific point in the Constitution talks about the office of an officer. And one of the arguments being used, the president isn't an officer. The president, according to the Constitution, appoints officers. So that's one of the arguments that are being put forward. But I think the bigger thing here is if the Colorado Supreme Court decision, by the way, Colorado Supreme Court is all made up of justices appointed by Democrat governors. But if they were to succeed, the Supreme Court argument, Colorado Supreme Court argument was to succeed, you're just going to have a barrage of these kinds of things. The red states will start to come up with reasons why Joe Biden shouldn't be on the ballot. This just opens up a huge can of worms, and I think if the justices of the Supreme Court are smart, they want to put this thing to bed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they'll 6-3, maybe 6-3, 7-2, who knows? But it'd probably be. But they'll rule that you can't take him off the ballot. Go ahead, Chris.
I do want to point our listeners to a couple of places where they can click a link and hear the arguments for themselves. If you go to the Today's Issues Facebook page, I have posted a C-SPAN link. You can click that and then click watch from the beginning, watch live, what have you, and listen to the thing for yourself and make your own informed decision. You can also look in the comment section of the Today's Issues Facebook page for this very program and get that information there as well.
Here's what they're arguing over. I'll read it and then we'll move on here. This is Section 3 of the U.S. Which amendment is this? 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Here's how it reads, quote, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, ad pop, an ad popped up, that's why I paused, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. I don't know what that means. Basically, this is saying you can't engage or support a insurrection or rebellion against the United States government, or you're disqualified from running for office. Isn't that what you read from that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the question before the court. Did former President Trump engage in a give aid or in a rebellion or an insurrection against the federal government?
One of the other arguments being made is that Trump has not been found guilty by any court of insurrection.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see what happens there, but that was before the United States Supreme Court this morning. Next story, Chris.
Well, a big event is coming up this evening, and you can watch it in a couple of places online. That being Tucker Carlson's exclusive sit-down interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Many people have criticized Tucker Carlson for traveling abroad to have an interview with Putin, who, by the way, this is the first interview that Putin has done with Western media since Russia's invasion of Ukraine about 2 years ago. So a big get for Tucker Carlson. And what you're going to hear now is about 90 seconds. We'll let Tim decide when to bail out of this, but it's about 90 seconds of Tucker explaining why he went abroad and did a sit-down interview with the president of Russia. Clip 1.
There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States. We want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information.
All right, stop right there. We could have gone on. That was Tucker Carlson. I think that was taped a couple nights ago.
It was.
And I saw it. He was outside in Moscow at night, and he was explaining, as he just did there, we can't play all of it, his reasons for being there and for interviewing Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia. Ray, what's your reaction to this?
Well, look, I think it's all to his credit that he got Putin to sit down. I'm sure. Look, Mr. Putin is he's a skillful leader. Other things aside, he's a skillful speaker. He's going to try to bend the discussion to the Russian point of view and in favor of the Russian side of the war in Ukraine. Yeah, we know that. That's what's going to happen. But you need somebody like Tucker Carlson, who's fearless, who's independent, who's going to go there presumably to ask him some tough questions. Is there a risk? Yeah. But we haven't seen a Western journalist, an American journalist, interview Mr. Putin in, a couple of years. This is all to the good that the interview has taken place, and I hope it sheds some light on what Mr. Putin is thinking about the future.
Well, I like the fact that it's going to be aired unedited.
Yes.
Now, when is this going to be on?
That's a great question. 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m.
Today?
Correct.
Fred, what do you think?
I think Tucker Carlson's a journalist, and a journalist has to interview people they don't necessarily agree with. But it's good to hear directly from the mouth of Vladimir Putin as to why you are doing this. And people can judge for themselves whether the man is lying in his response or, okay, that's a point of view I haven't heard before. I think the thrust of Putin's argument has been that, at least for the eastern portion of Ukraine, he believes that belongs to his country. That's his belief, that he's taking back. And we have heard that there are people who live in that eastern portion of Ukraine who are loyal to Russia already, even though they're in Ukrainian territory. So let's have a listen to what he has to say. People can make judgments for themselves as to whether Putin is lying. But I think also to Tucker Carlson's point, The American people are spending billions of dollars giving to the Ukraine, trusting that Ukraine's cause is just. So I think it is good for the American people to hear this. The other thing is just Tucker Carlson knows how to get an audience. A couple of weeks ago, he went up to Canada. He says, "We're here to free Canada from Justin Trudeau." He went to Alberta. "We're here to free Canada." You know, he knows how to catch attention. That's, but he's a journalist. Let's hear from both sides of the story. Tonight, you get to hear from Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me we're headed toward, if you're going to end this war between Russia and Ukraine, it seems to me Ukraine's going to have to give up a third of their country, the landmass that you're talking about.
Yeah.
In order, I don't know if that would satisfy Vladimir Putin or not. But
maybe we'll find out tonight.
Well, yeah, but maybe that would be the reality of it. Ray, you've traveled in Ukraine, right? I mean,
right. Been there a couple times, and the problem with the way you've proposed it is, I think Mr. Zelensky is not willing to do what you just said, at least not yet, right? The Ukrainians are tough fighters. They have held out longer than a lot of people thought they could against the Russians. But wouldn't it be fair now? Doesn't it feel like it's a stalemate?
Yeah.
As if neither side is going to win. So how are you going to if you give up the eastern third or some big part of the eastern third of Ukraine, I don't see how he can even stay in office. And then what happens in Ukraine? So I don't see yet an end out of this morass, but it feels like a stalemate, and billions of dollars are being poured into this conflict that we seem to be stuck right now.
Yeah.
Right. Billions of American taxpayer dollars.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Dollars that could have been spent on the southern border. Some Americans, many Americans have said.
Yeah, or how about not go trillions and trillions and trillions of more dollars into debt?
That's right.
Either one. But if the Ukrainians did not have the American money, I don't know, would they be able to sustain the fight against Russia? I don't know what NATO provides. Well, they're not a member of NATO.
No, that's right.
They want to be. Yeah.
But I don't know how much money other countries give other than the U.S.
Well, if the U.S. pulled out, you think Germany's going to keep pouring money?
No.
Or Poland?
Probably be the end of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, that's part of what Putin is.
I think it's
part of his calculus that we'll pull out and the whole thing will just collapse.
Well, you got to have money to fund a war.
Yeah, you do.
So if Ukraine doesn't have money, they will fold.
Yep.
They'll have to fold. They'll have to surrender. Seems to me.
Yep.
Probably the whole country. If you don't have, listen, I was thinking about this last night. Who's running the world now? I mean, really, it's when you see Biden, President Biden, he doesn't remember what's for dinner.
No.
Okay, bless his heart. He needs to retire today. We talked about this yesterday, and everybody knows this. Everybody knows this.
He's in communion with dead prime ministers and people like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's
he's not running the free. He's not in charge, really. I think
Not really.
for the U.S., you've got Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and what's the gentleman's name who's the National Security Advisor?
Kirby.
Yeah. Seems to me those two guys are running our at least our foreign policy.
Yes.
Don't you think so?
Absolutely.
Biden couldn't even remember what Hamas' name was the other day.
No.
I mean,
He blanked. Yeah.
so he's not running it. Kamala Harris, she's not. They probably even keep her out of meetings. So, I mean, and then you've got anyway. We can talk about this more when we get back, but it's kind of a scary time.
It is.
Quite frankly, when you don't know who's in charge. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Did you ever notice the wonder of words? They have the power to heal or to hurt, to stab or to soothe, to lift or to level. And in that respect, each of us were created equal. That is, we can use or abuse this wonderful power of the spoken word. It's easy to be cutting in one's remarks, and certainly this is the tempting route sometimes. All of us have, at some time in our life, experienced the very deep hurt that comes from the cutting remarks. And, beyond a doubt, each of us has been guilty of expressing cutting remarks ourselves. For words to cut deeply into one's heart doesn't mean they have to be spoken with malice or prejudice. Indeed, the deepest hurt comes from words spoken apart from malice or prejudice. For those who speak with malice or prejudice usually have very little, if any, concern for those they speak against. But let one who is supposed to love us speak a selfish word to us, and the cut goes into the quick. 2 young men were called upon one day to give a dramatic reading before a very select audience. One of the young men was a very intelligent, very seasoned performer. He had the ability to hold the audience in his grip. The other young man was not so seasoned, had not the opportunity for experience. But he had one quality which was a part of him more than anything else. He wanted to become an actor. More than anything in all the world, he wished to be an actor. The first young man went before the crowd polished and perfect, except for one slight flaw in pronouncing a word. When he walked off the stage, his mother was waiting for him. She immediately began condemning the young man because he made the single mistake. She said nothing about the rest of the speech, which was absolutely perfect. The only thing the young man could hear coming from the lips of his mother was condemnation for only a slight error, a slip of the tongue. The mother acted as if she was embarrassed by the son's mistake. The second young man went to the stage. He mispronounced several words, about like I do, forgot his script in 3 places, and in general gave a very poor amateur performance. But the audience could tell that the young man was trying as hard as he could. When he walked from the stage, he was utterly disgusted with his performance and vowed to do better next time. His mother, waiting for him as he stepped from the stage, put her arms around him and said to him in a voice of love, "I'm proud of you, son. You did the best you could. You'll do better next time." Yes, it is rather strange, the power that words have. It costs nothing more to speak constructively than it does cuttingly. It takes no more breath to speak helpful words than it does hurting words. And the constructive and helpful words do so much more good. If you were coming down from the stage, which words would you like to hear? Well, the rest of us would also. Let's try to speak them.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. Colossians 1:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, Chris, and Ray, thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Joining us now is our good friend, Dr. Alex McFarland. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Alex, I don't know if you heard our show last few minutes. Were you able to listen?
Yes, I was listening about the last 5 minutes.
So who's running the world, Alex?
Ultimately, the dear Lord. But in terms of our nation's capital, I don't know. I've been told by some Washington insiders that we're in Barack Obama's 3rd term.
Well, I could buy that, except if Barack Obama is in charge, why didn't he tell Joe Biden to leave?
Well, you know, and let me preface my remarks by saying I do pray for our president. I pray for the cabinet. I really do. I have no ill will. The Lord knows. I mean, I care about these people. Fundamentally, I care about their soul, because I'm going to say this as a minister of the gospel. Joe Biden needs to get born again while there's still time. He doesn't know the Lord. You can't be wrong on everything and be born again. You know?
No, I
I
agree.
mean,
He can't even explain Catholic teaching, much less
yeah.
other.
And in January of 2020, when he was running, he said, and I quote, "There is no place in the Democrat Party for someone who is not pro-choice."
Yeah.
Well, that's all I need to hear.
Right.
In many ways, I'm a single-issue voter, because if someone will remove legal protection for the unborn, and if someone will not only countenance but encourage the killing of the unborn, I wouldn't put anything past you.
Yeah. Let me say, I guess, and I know this is a broad question, but I was thinking about the world right now. We were talking about Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin. You've got the war in Ukraine versus Russia. Yeah, now, if American dollars quit going to Ukraine, Ukraine will fold. Russia will take it over. Does that matter? Then you got China probably going to take Taiwan in the next 3 to 5 years with little or no resistance. Maybe they'll be resisted inside Taiwan. I don't know. Ray, you've traveled over there too. Is there worry?
Oh, there is. Listen.
In Taiwan, I'm talking about. You've
Taiwan.
traveled in mainland China and you've traveled in Taiwan. Go ahead.
Taiwan, and they are on full alert 24/7, 365, because that's straight. The strait there between mainland China and Taiwan, that's not very big. The Chinese Army, Air Force, Navy could bridge it just in an hour or 2 or 3. I mean, it wouldn't be hard. And
does Taiwan even have a military?
Sure.
They do?
And they've
Okay.
got tremendous defense systems.
Okay.
Tremendous. I mean, they are prepared.
Okay.
They're prepared to fight back if they're. But how long could they hold out against the true might of mainland China?
Right.
No one knows the answer to that question. I think they got to hold out for a while, but not too long.
Yeah, but you got those things going on. Then you have what's happening in the Middle East. Not only Israel and their own situation, which with Hamas but you got the broader Middle Eastern picture with a U.S. versus Iran. We're fighting their proxies now. Yesterday, Chris, the U.S. Took a serious military step, right?
Yes.
Against Iran. What happened there?
A U.S. drone strike killed the head of an Iran-backed militia in Baghdad. The man's name was Mohammed al-Bakr al-Sadi. He's one of the people that spearheaded the attack that killed 3 American service members and wounded many others last month.
That's in Baghdad in Iraq.
An Iran-backed militia.
So
I'll share a link.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to say, I'm not saying anything everybody doesn't know. We live in an extremely volatile time.
Very.
And to have a president that's basically mentally incapacitated is frightening.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes.
So, but we'll see what happens. I have heard the rumors, Susan Rice, who was, what was she like? She was very high up in the Obama administration. Remember her?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Well, she worked for for Biden for a couple of years. And then she left. And I don't know who the chief of staff is now but I have heard the same rumors you've heard, that Obama is basically pulling the strings of the Biden administration, the Biden White House. And I'm sure there's a lot of crossover, obviously. I mean, they're all Democrats, the Obama team and the Biden team. But I just don't I've said before, Alex, I think the Democrats are hoping that Biden can get through November and then turn it over to somebody else. Or he's going to have to step down pretty quick, seems to me, so he can allow for – like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, to run as the Democrat nominee, because he's way down in approval ratings. I mean, there's no upside to staying with him, quite frankly, if you're a Democrat. Doesn't seem to
in monarchies, somebody would abdicate the throne and step down. And, I think about this. When Obama was running for his first term, he defended traditional marriage. And he said marriage is between a man and a woman. Within hours of getting inaugurated for his second term, he said his views had evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So it was a bait and switch, and his views didn't evolve. He always was progressive, but and this is very duplicitous, very dishonest to, present yourself one way, but once you've clinched the second term, then suddenly, surprise, surprise, he's for gay marriage. And it might be this way because, I could be wrong. I just think it's too late in the game for them to launch a different candidate.
Okay.
So if Biden were to, God forbid, win a second term, then very early in, he would abdicate or he would be forced to, and it would be handed either to the VP or somebody else.
Yeah.
Which is not constitutional, by the way, but since when did the Democrats follow the rule of law?
Yeah.
In normal times, I'd agree with you, Alex, but we always have to remember the Democratic Party and the mainstream media in this country are hand in glove. So they could do what you were just saying that would cost them. They could still do it, and CBS and NBC and CNN would all fall in love with whoever they chose to replace Biden.
Yeah.
The power of the media right now is absolutely incredible. How they're covering up, with the exception of Fox, how they're covering up the crisis at our southern border. I get to watch when I go to the gym CNN and CBS and NBC. I have yet to see them go down to the border and show the American people what's going on. Thank God for Fox and what they've been doing. Otherwise, you'd hear the CBS and NBC and CNN version of the border story as being, it's all caused by Donald Trump. Joe Biden this week said the problem is Donald Trump and those MAGA crowd.
To which I gave him a shout out, and it was this: liar, liar, pants on fire.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I think of. That's so stupid. I'm sorry to call the president stupid, but and such a lie to say Donald Trump is responsible for the border crisis. That's what.
May I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
And you guys are so gracious to let me be on. I appreciate that. But I just want to say a word to all my Christian friends out there, and especially my fellow ministers and pastors. I was at a function Tuesday night, and people were asking me, is Trump going to be the nominee? And I said, well, yeah, I think so. And they said, well, but my goodness, I'm a Christian, and Trump is so abrasive. And here's a message I would love to give to the American church. And at NRB, I think I'm going to have an interview with George Barna, and I know you all know he's a very respected pollster. And Barna says there's somewhere between 68 to 130 million born-again adults. I mean, that's, praise God. I want to say to the church, please don't let your tolerance level for impoliteness cost us the election. See, Democrats and Republicans vote differently. Democrats, they vote for revolutionaries. Conservatives vote for somebody they think they would like to have dinner with. And I realize, look, I'm not saying Trump is the guy that you want to go on vacation with. Look, maybe he's the rudest, most abrasive human wrecking ball that's ever come down the pike. I'm just saying, folks, have the courage and the presence of mind to look at the Constitution, our relationship with Israel, securing the border, defending the rights of tax-paying American citizens. Please don't let your tolerance level for impoliteness cause you not to vote or influence others to do the same. Tim, am I saying this correctly?
Oh yeah. No, you've got to look. In the end, you have to look at somebody's policies.
Yes.
When they're going to be, you may not like their personality, and I don't like Donald Trump's personality.
Nor I.
I just don't, and I couldn't hang out with him for more than an hour because I wouldn't want to hear him brag about something. It just, I get. But after that being said, somebody, as you say, you got to look at somebody's policies. Okay, that's first and foremost. What are they going to do that's going to affect our country? And what do they believe, and what do they stand for, and what kind of people they're going to surround themselves with? That's first and foremost when you go to the polls and vote. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, and Chris, and Ray, and Alex. Alex, we're going to do a complete topic change here because I was trying to think about what we wanted to talk about today when you came on. Are you able to stay with us next few minutes?
Yes, sir.
By the way, you still making peanut butter?
We are.
I didn't get any for Christmas this year. That's why I wondered. Homemade
well,
peanut.
I can rectify that right away. But
Tim's keeping receipts now.
Well, I mean, if I did get it, you usually send me peanut butter, homemade peanut butter from the McFarland Farm in North Carolina.
Yeah, and you know what?
I meant to talk to you off the air about this, but I mean, you're here. So.
We got behind with my speaking schedule. In fact, believe it or not, this week I'm interviewing a gentleman that we are going to put in charge because my goal is that one day, see, everything we've ever made since 2009 has gone to missions, and I believe one day the peanut butter company will be giving $1 million a year to missions. That's the whole reason we've kept that thing going.
Amen. Okay, well, so do I need to remind you after the show's over to get that in the mail to me, or?
Because hey, listen, I'm kind of beating myself up here. Definitely,
well, you need to.
I need to send the boss peanut butter at Christmas.
I mean, it's not gonna. I mean, we're still friends and everything. I'm just saying I was expecting it, and it never came in January, and here we are, the middle of February.
I know.
So if you could get that in the mail,
I
to
need
me,
grace,
yeah,
Brother Tim.
Oh, wait, you got it. So just send
Thank you.
Just send me 2, though. Okay.
I shall.
Okay. All right. So I want to change subjects, and Ray, you can feel free to. And Alex doesn't know what I'm going to talk about, and neither does anybody else. But Alex, you speak a lot about discoveries that are made today that confirm the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you talk about this a lot. Antiquities, places, excavations. That really interests you, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Well, give me 2 or 3 things that have impressed you the last couple of years that you've seen reported in the news. I know I'm springing this on you. If you don't have anything to say, we'll revisit it next week when you have more time to prepare. But you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, in our lifetime, there have been so many things that validate, corroborate, I would say prove what the Bible says. And one of the biggest ones in, the last few years, and I was there about 5 years ago, but it's the Pool of Siloam, I mean, they've excavated the Pool of Siloam where Jesus performed a healing, absolutely corroborates what we read in John chapter 9 about Jesus healing a blind man. And that's one. Another, and maybe some on the show right now have been there, but Hezekiah's water tunnel. The Bible talks about this tunnel that was under the walls of Jerusalem, and they thought that, okay, that was probably just, some ancient Zionist embellishment. They couldn't have had the technology to do that, and yet there is a 1,700-foot tunnel under the walls of Jerusalem that was carved out, and you can go walk through it. Now, we could talk about the manuscripts, and by the way, give me a minute to set this up. All right, we've got the New Testament, 27 books, Matthew through Revelation, and we've got several thousand copies of the New Testament books, and then there are probably 50,000 fragments that are portions of New Testament books. Now, this is huge. This is really huge. A couple of years ago, I debated the atheist Bart Ehrman. And Bart Ehrman, I asked him, I said, are there any conservative scholars that you do respect? And he said, well, Dan Wallace is probably the best New Testament scholar in the world. Now, Dan Wallace is a conservative evangelical. And I called Dan Wallace. I said, hey, even Bart Ehrman says he respects you. And Dan Wallace and I were talking about the fact that within the first 200 years of the church, there are examples of New Testament verses in early church correspondence. So let's say some Christian somewhere wrote something to another Christian and quote a Bible verse, Philippians 1:6, being confident of this very thing. So anyway, Dan Wallace and I were talking, and Dan Wallace remarked to me that he said, we could reconstruct every verse of the New Testament based on early church correspondence. And I said, well, I've always heard there were 86,000 examples of New Testament verses quoted in parchments that have been found. Dan Wallace said, well, we don't use that number anymore. I said, really? He said, yeah, it's well over 500,000. Now, here's my point, Tim, to your question, archaeology and evidences. Folks, we have thousands and thousands of New Testament manuscripts, meaning you can trust the New Testament that tells us of the risen Christ through whom we are born again. But even if the New Testament manuscripts didn't exist, we could, and according to the New Testament scholar, and Sean McDowell would validate this, Gary Habermas, Michael Licona, Dan Wallace, who even arch-atheist Bart Ehrman respects, even if we had none of the New Testament manuscripts, we could reconstruct every word of your New Testament based on verse references discovered in early church correspondence. Are you following me? Mm-hmm. Here's my point. God gave His Word. God preserved His Word. We have God's Word, and it tells us of Jesus, the one and only Savior.
Ray?
Alex, I want to ask a follow-up question here because it's really got two parts to it. Because today we have a plethora of Bible translations. I mean, it's almost an embarrassment of riches. We've never had so many translations. When I grew up, it was the King James and only the King James. And then we went wild. We had the New American Standard and then the NIV and then the ESV. But now, here in 2024, we have, you can go online and see all these different translations. Would it be fair to say that there are some differences between the manuscripts, and you've got some a few places where there are questions like Mark 16 or the story of the woman taken in adultery, but outside of those, can our lay people, and I think I already know the answer to this, but I just want to give you a chance to say it clearly, can our lay people who are going to church, and they're not experts in Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic, can they know with confidence that when they read the Bible, they are reading they are reading substantially exactly the Word of God as it was given to us? Should our people have that confidence that the Bible they hold is indeed God's message to us today?
Absolutely. Folks, I know we get kind of deep in the weeds talking about manuscripts and things like that, but you can trust that the Bible you have is the absolute Word of God. And let me just say this. When I was in graduate school at Liberty University, one of my professors was a man named Dr. Brent Sandy, one of the founders of the American Society of Papyrologists. They study the papyri. And I remember Dr. Sandy, brilliant man, multiple postgraduate degrees, and a conservative scholar. And he said the Bible verses that are, kind of challenging, you could count on less than 5 fingers, really. And even then, we have enough manuscripts to make a very substantiated conclusion about what it says. And, like Bert and I, when Bert Harper and I are doing Exploring the Word every day, as we will be, 3 to 4 Central, 4 to 5 Eastern, I'll have my Greek lexicon in front of me as we're doing the show. And here's the thing, folks. Translation is like a word exchange. When John 3:16 says, whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. I mean, I'm reading it in the Greek, and that's what it means. There's don't worry that there's this ambiguity. Well, what does it mean? No, it means we put our faith in Jesus who died on the cross. And I want to say on the moral issues, when it says in Genesis 1:26 and 27 that God made male and female, that means in the original language he made male and female. So please don't let the talk of Hebrew, Greek translations, don't let that intimidate you. When you are reading any of the great, like New King James or New American Standard or NLT or ESV, yes, it is God's Word, and language is like a container, a vehicle that we put substance in. Words have substance and objective meaning. And I think, Tim and Ray, to your question, one of the things that we in this generation must do, we must teach in our churches and really proclaim to the world that God's Word is authoritative, and we live it, we proclaim it, we believe it, but we don't change it or spin it. The Bible is God's Word, and it is the authority that we're under.
What version do you use, Fred?
Use NIV.
Okay.
ESV. I use those.
English Standard Version. And NIV.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Alex, quick question for you. You spend a lot of time talking to young people. Is it important to address what you have been addressing here in the last 10, 15 minutes of the proof of the truthfulness of God's Word based on what we're seeing, what archaeologists are discovering, based on what you just gave us on all of these verses being used in the first 200 years of church history? Is that something that you can engage young people with?
Absolutely, and they love it. They love it. We do 6, and this year 7 summer camps. And I want to tell you, it's funny, Tim, I was a youth pastor for 11 years. And
lived to tell about it?
Oh, yeah. And Angie and I are in a different church like almost every weekend, right, speaking to youth. And I got to tell you, 30 years ago, a lot of my youth pastor friends it was like pizza, paintball, and Pepsi. They were like, oh, Alex, kids don't want to know this deep stuff.
Right.
Well, 30 years in, we're still doing it. Kids love to know truth because they're very concrete thinkers. The mind of an adolescent is very black and white, really. And let me just challenge you, everyone who maybe you're a Sunday school teacher or a volunteer, don't water down the gospel. Give kids what they're hungry for, and they're hungry for truth. We had 1,200 kids in 7 youth camps last summer, and they thank me for speaking to them like they've got intelligence, because they do.
Well, next week we'll talk about your youth camps coming up this summer because there's still time to register, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
What's the website to register, by the way?
EquipRetreat.org.
And what's the closest one to Tupelo?
Probably South Carolina or Georgia.
Okay.
Georgia. I'm going to say Georgia.
The reason I was saying it, maybe we'll take this show on the road and come do a today's issues from one of your camps and interview some of these kids.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Okay. That would be awesome.
Well, we'll talk about that. As long as you send me that peanut butter.
Yeah, you got it, friend.
All right. We'll be back in 5 minutes with more of today's issues.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Dr. Travis was a man that was full of life.
Bert Harper of Exploring the Word.
He loved the Word of God, and it came across in the classroom. Dr. Travis put in my heart a desire to know God through His Word. And that's what we're trying to do on Exploring the Word.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments now in the case known as Trump v. Anderson. At issue is whether the Colorado Supreme Court erred in ordering former President Donald Trump excluded from the 2024 presidential primary ballot because of so-called insurrection on January 6th. The biggest problem with Colorado's case, according to Trump attorney Jonathan Mitchell, is that there was no insurrection.
For an insurrection, there needs to be an organized, concerted effort to overthrow the government of the United States through violence. And this
so
riot
your point
that
is that a chaotic effort to overthrow the government is not an insurrection?
No, we didn't concede that it's an effort to overthrow the government either, Justice Jackson. Right? None of these criteria were met. This was a riot. It was not an insurrection. The events were shameful, criminal, violent, all of those things, but it did not qualify as insurrection as that term is used in Section 3.
And Justice Brett Kavanaugh says the clause dealing with insurrection was meant to be dealt with by Congress, not the states.
The historical practice for 155 years has been that that's the way it's gone. There haven't been state attempts to enforce disqualification under Section 3 against federal officers in the years since. So whether that's a Federalist 37 liquidation argument, it all reinforces what happened back in 1868, 1869, and 1870.
More young people and people of color are choosing not to vote for President Biden, which could negatively impact his 2024 re-election campaign. Congressman John James of Michigan explains why more young voters and people of color are leaning more conservative.
We are providing alternatives, good, strong policies that will make our economy stronger, our borders stronger, and our world a safer place.
A conservative activist says the new poll provides more evidence that immigration and the economy will be winning issues for Republicans in 2024.
A new poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research finds that 65% of those surveyed still call the economy poor, with 35% calling the national economy good. The new poll puts President Biden's approval rating at 38%, which is roughly where that number has stood for most of the past 2 years. Biden's approval rating on handling the economy is similar at 35%. And many of those who were polled think the economic woes are related to the increase of illegal aliens crossing the U.S. border and diverting financial resources from American citizens. Robert Knight is a conservative activist and a columnist for the Washington Times.
People are so upset at the border being wide open and the economy costing them a fortune in their savings and everyday budgets. The Republicans have to pound the immigration issue, the economy, and they have to give a clear message on abortion. And if they do all those things, I think they will do very well in November.
Knight says they cannot allow the Democrats to use abortion like a weapon, like in the last election.
And they misrepresented the Republican stance, and they hid their own extremism, which is to have abortions right up to the moment of birth, no restrictions whatsoever, no parental notification, nothing. A lot of the American people didn't know that. They bought the Democrats' line that Republicans wanted to control women's bodies and so forth. I don't think that'll work this time around.
I'm Chad groaning.
If you're in the habit of going to the grocery store, you may have noticed a few of your favorite items being out of stock intermittently or for more than a few weeks at a time. And you've certainly noticed the price of beef has increased dramatically. And a shortage of beef cows in this country is going to make the situation much worse. Virginia rancher John Boyd Jr. is the founder of the National Black Farmers Association. He says Joe Biden's policies are to blame.
I tell you, this is a bad situation for America's cattle farmers and America, because we're producing 1 billion pounds less of beef than we were in this country just a year ago. And we're not investing in America's beef and cattle farmers. Biden policies are hurting America's cattlemen, such as myself. They should be investing in America's cattle farmers and making sure that we have the tools needed to stay on the farm. You know, we have everybody stacked up against it. We got Bill Gates saying, eat fake meat.
More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Forget about Facebook.
The last 10 days, we've been banned twice, and is unbanning a word?
They put us under the ban. Christians and conservatives
don't need your YouTube.
Banned one day, banned again.
AFR programs are now live streaming on the AFA streaming app. Now you can get shows like Today's Issues straight from the source.
Put back on the next.
Just say unbanned.
Unbanned.
Just search AFA Streaming or visit streaming.afa.net to sign up. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Got 24 and a half minutes left on this show today. I'm Tim Wildman with Fred Jackson and Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Hey.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Raised in Kansas City. I guess the town is, Kansas City is almost getting routine with the Super Bowl, so I don't know.
Well, this is going to be, the fourth in 5 years and the start of a dynasty if they win it. So people are nuts. I mean, they're just –
They won two.
There's over the top. We're way over the top.
Now, is this Kansas City's won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years? Is that right?
Yeah, I guess that's right. That they won 2, then they lost 1 to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers.
So this is their 4th appearance, you said, in 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you win another Super Bowl, that would be 3. That would be a dynasty. Yeah, that qualifies, in my opinion. That would be quite remarkable, especially for having 6 regular season losses this year. It's almost as if they just turned it on.
Healthy a little bit, and
that's true.
I thought Buffalo's going to beat them. I thought
Ravens.
Baltimore was going to
me
beat
too.
them. And but just don't bet against Pat Mahomes in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean he picks it up.
Well, I've mentioned this before, and then we'll finish with football talk here. But there is a player on Kansas City Chiefs. You'll watch him. You'll notice him this weekend on Sunday during the Super Bowl. His name is Chris Jones, and he's like an all-pro defensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, his name will be called a lot if he's not injured. I don't think he is. He's from here.
Oh, Mississippi?
He's from about 20 miles from here, a town called 25, 30 miles from here, a town called Houston, Mississippi. And so about 2 years ago, I was eating at a restaurant here locally. Alice and I, we walked in with our family, some of our family members, and walked up and got in line, and I looked up to the sky, and there was this human mountain, and it was Chris Jones, and he's 6'7".
Man,
he's 6'7", probably 300 pounds, and
what position does he play?
He doesn't have any body fat. No, he plays defensive line for the Kansas. You'll hear his name. He's all pro. Chris Jones. You know what I'm talking about, obviously, right?
Listen. If the Chiefs win, he's going to be a big reason because he's a great pass rusher.
Yeah.
When he's on his game, Tim, Chris Jones is almost unstoppable.
Yeah, you can't block him with one lineman. You have to have 2 if you want to hope to block him. But I don't. I've seen Shaquille O'Neal up close and personal when he was in his college days at LSU, and that was the largest human being I've ever seen. He was 7'1", 310 pounds, and at that time, Shaquille O'Neal, there was no flab. He was a rock.
I went to college with a guy who was 7'8". 7'8", probably weighed 200 pounds. He was skin and bones. But
was he a foreigner?
What's that?
Was he a foreigner?
No, his name is George Bell from Virginia. He's in Virginia now. He's a police officer. 7'8". He played on Biola University's basketball team. They went to the state national championship with the AIA.
7 feet,
7
8 inches
foot,
tall?
8 inches tall. The tallest player in the nation at the time, and maybe even since. But I remember walking into the dorm room and seeing this. First day on the dorm hall. I walk up the stairs. First time I'm looking down the hallway with rooms on the right and left. I see this figure come out, duck under a door, walk, and duck under into another room. Go, what did I just see? But he was a really nice guy, great with kids.
Yeah.
So in my early radio days, I worked for a station that was an affiliate of the Oakland A's, and I got to go up for the station and do some reporting in the clubhouse and everything. I got to see up close and personal with a lot of MLB players. And you go up there, and if you're young and if you were halfway athletic, you think, I might have been able to do this. I've been on the sidelines of an NBA game and an NFL game. There's no way. I mean, those guys are so big.
It's the reason they get paid the big bucks right there. All right. What's your first story, Steve?
Well, let's talk about whether or not Michelle Obama is going to be going to Washington, D.C. to run for the White House.
Why? Have you talked to Ed about this?
I have not. I'll check in with Ed afterwards.
Ed
is free to bring his opinions on this on Monday if he wants, I suppose. But
yeah, go ahead.
I'm not espousing my own opinion on this, but I am quoting Karl Rove. Karl Rove says Michelle Obama hates politics. If you read her biography, he says she hates politics. So she's probably not going to be running, he says. It's just not a chance. Joe Biden thinks he's the only – this is Karl Rove's diagnosis. He doesn't think that Joe Biden is going to make it till November, but he doesn't think that Michelle is going to replace him. This is his Karl Rove's statement from Fox Business. Joe Biden thinks he's the only person who can beat Donald Trump in the Democrat Party. He may be the only person that can lose to Donald Trump in the Democrat Party.
Interesting. Yeah, well, Ed suggested maybe, it would be a Michelle Obama to the rescue. Ed suggested that a few months back, and I openly mocked Ed on that because I said no. Michelle Obama likes vacationing on yachts in the Mediterranean with George Clooney.
You better hope he does.
And so she doesn't want to be president. I don't think she does.
She strikes fear in the heart of a lot of Republicans.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think she's some kind of superwoman that could win going away? I mean, I think
just name recognition.
I don't know. Yeah.
Nah, that's not going to be enough. With the state of our country right now, no.
I think the stronger hand, Ray, in my opinion, of course, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if Biden's not there, Kamala Harris would not be the one. I would recruit the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer.
Gretchen Whitmer?
I would recruit her. Again, she's governor lockdown. Don't misunderstand me. I don't like any of her politics. I'm just seeing her as a viable candidate to replace Biden, should he not be there. But you think? What do you think?
This is part of the problem, isn't it? That if it's not Michelle Obama, okay, I can understand the attraction of putting her on the ticket. But if it's not Michelle Obama, who is it that's going to beat the Republicans in a situation as messed up as our current political situation is? Gavin Newsom? No, I mean DeSantis eviscerated him in that debate. Gretchen Whitmer, outside of Michigan, how well known is she? So I think the problem is the Democrats' bench is not very deep in terms of good presidential candidates.
That's true. Well, listen, Biden has dismal approval rating numbers, but so does Trump. So it's a race to the bottom. President Trump and President Biden both had similar numbers in terms of their job approval numbers. They are loathed by the opposition very much. So the general public, the middle, the independents, I guess that'll be where the race is won or lost. I'm talking about if it's Biden-Trump, which it looks like it's going to be in November.
As of this article, I think he was at 37% approval rating.
Who, Biden?
Biden,
60-something opposed.
Yeah.
Unfavorable.
Yeah, next story, Steve.
All right. We've been a little critical of Disney for a while because of their choices. You remember the reissuing of Snow White with the 7 dudes?
Yeah, what was that? Some kind of – has that movie come out yet?
No. They
put it on the back burner.
They might have done that because the star.
It wasn't what they did was they took. Well, there are multiple problems with things, Disney decisions they've made on many levels the last couple of years. But what they did with that movie, the 7 Snow White and the 7 Dwarves, they changed that to it's going to be a movie with actual people, not an animation. And the 7 dwarves are
7 diverse people. One of them is a small person, and the other are just diverse.
Yeah, because they want to get away from. Why are they doing that?
Because diversity. And this is the thing. I just
Snow White's not. Is she even white?
No, she's Hispanic.
And was Snow White meant to talk about her skin color? I think it was.
I think it was
back in the day.
Yeah, and they might have to change with white supremacy. All the talk about that, they might have to change the title of the thing. But she did more to scuttle that movie with her comments.
Who did?
The actress that they had to play Snow White. But Elon Musk found a little paper, a big paper with a bunch of inclusion standards that Disney is putting on all of its movies. Disney and their affiliates, ABC, ESPN, Marvel, all of these are owned by Disney. Now, according to this, the general entertainment content, they're going to need, Disney from now on is going to have to put in 50% or more regular and recurring written characters from underrepresented groups. 50% or more regular of the actors actually have to be from the underrepresented groups.
What's an underrepresented group?
Well, LGBT, black, gay,
they're overrepresented.
No, 50%.
I'm talking about the LGBTQ. It's every other show. Anyway, go ahead.
And this goes. So it's the TV shows, it's the production companies, it's the distribution companies, all throughout the whole process of any show. If you are they're requiring standards of so many LGBT or underrepresented people. Well, Elon Musk looked at the thing and said, well, you know what? This a lot of white actors, producers, writers are going to be out of a job just simply because of this. So this is what he tweeted out. He said, an anonymous source just sent me this from Disney. It's a mandatory institutionalized racism and sexism. If you were discriminated against by Disney or its subsidiaries, just reply to this post to receive legal support. Elon Musk is
he going to pay for their lawyers?
It sounds like he is.
By the way, if I were a dwarf, I would be very upset that they're not using my people in the Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs story. They're changing the story altogether, which means a lot of dwarfs are not going to be able to have jobs.
It cuts both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, to answer that, I think Disney will just say, we're going to hire a 6-footer who identifies as a dwarf.
There you go.
That's good.
So
well, why not?
That gets the box. That gets the box.
Get that 7'8" guy.
Yeah.
We were talking about.
As long as he can identify as a dwarf, he can be in the movie.
I guess.
How about that?
Doesn't matter.
Yep.
When is corporate America going to realize that regular America doesn't buy into all of this stuff?
Nobody cares.
Yep. The box office, it's going to fail.
Listen, there was a day and time in our country where I could see where affirmative action, for example, would have been needed to integrate ethnic minorities into the. I could understand that. When we had the civil rights movement and those kinds of things. But this country for 20 years, 30 years has basically been colorblind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the opportunities, well, more than that, probably 30, 40 years. this country has been colorblind, and any kind of racial discrimination has been shunned or has been.
There's no systemic stuff left.
No, there's not. There's not. And if you can achieve, if you have the ability, you will make it in America in whatever profession you want to call it. You're not going to be held back because of your race.
No.
Or because of your ethnicity. That's just not happening in America anymore. Listen, I've been around a lot of doctors, medical doctors, the last couple of months, as I've talked about with Allison, my wife, going through cancer treatments, and a majority of them are either Indian. Are either, I'm talking about Indian, their heritage, their family heritage. They may be American, but their family heritage is like the country India, not
India,
not Native Americans. Or there was a doctor at UAB from, very smart gynecologist from that we dealt with from South America, but Brazil, I think. So I'm just saying, these people are coming to the U.S. They're not Anglo. They're not white doctors. So you can make it in our country. Listen, if we applied this standard that these lefties are always promoting, that people are discriminated against, and that's the reason they can't make it, because the white people in America oppress people of color. Are we going to apply that to the NBA? Because if that's the case, if you want ethnicity, if you want diversity, then they need to put more Anglos on NBA teams in the name of diversity. Well, that's not going to happen. You know why? Because, well, it might happen, but it'll only happen if those players are good enough to make the teams. That's when it'll happen.
Here's the problem, Ray. It's no longer, colorblind is out. Colorblind is bad now, because if you're colorblind, then you don't see the black person's plight or the minority's discrimination, and you don't feel guilty about your own whiteness. It's gone all kinds of weird places, Ray.
Well, it would actually be a fine advance if colorblindness could exist, as if it were done on the basis of merit, background, effort, gifting, talent. And where that has prevailed in American society, which, Tim, as you said, it's largely across the board, it's been a great advance. But that's not what the diversity people want.
No.
They want favoritism.
They don't. Yeah, the qualification is like third on the list now.
Yeah.
They want to check boxes. And you start doing that in the airline industry, like they talk about.
Oh, and they
checking
are
boxes instead of checking qualifications. There's even, a lot of places they don't want to do standardized testing anymore. Have you noticed this?
Oh, yes.
For high school students, because they claim that's discriminatory. And I'm going, how's that? Everybody gets the same test. How's that discriminatory? Now, I'm talking about. By the way, I don't believe the average minority, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, in America, I don't think the average person out there wants to do away with qualifications or opportunities in the name of diversity for diversity's sake. If you ask a minority, ethnic minority, you want to fly with somebody who's a pilot because they earned their wings or because they finished 15th in their class, but they got pushed to the job because they're fit the right boxes, the ethnicity or the gender or the LGBT. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They're going to pick the most qualified pilot. So anyway, let's move on. Next
the
story.
The argument against DEI should go no farther than Karine Jean-Pierre. Hey, I've got to ask Fred, my Canadian friend, what's going on up in the north here. You want to know why people aren't storming the Canadian border to get into Canada? Maybe it's because of this. I want you to hear Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Well, 5 foot of snow's a deterrent.
That might do
Tell you
it too. This is Justin Trudeau talking about politics in Canada. Cut 9.
Mr. Speaker, what we hear from the Leader of the Opposition is under the previous Conservative government, everything was perfect, and what he is proposing to do is to make Canada great again. That is not what Canadians want.
Make Canada average again, huh?
The capital C Conservative leader in Canada is a guy by the name Pierre Poilievre. And if you want to have some fun someday, just go to YouTube and watch the exchanges between Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. Because Pierre Poilievre is so sharp, and I would have loved to have heard his response to what Trudeau just said. You mean Canada wants to make Canada great again? Yeah.
That's not what Canada wants. that was like a Saturday Night Live skit or something.
Yeah.
We don't want to be great again.
Yeah, Pierre was his dad. Justin Trudeau is the kamikaze pilot of politics. He is doing his best to drive Canada into the ground.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Hey, listen, we got 2 or 3 minutes left here. I wanted to mention before Steve goes to the last story. We got 16 people signed up today alone for our June Washington, D.C. Mount Vernon Spiritual Heritage Tour. So registrations are happening each and every day. So I'm just saying, people, if you want to go with us to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, or you want to go with us to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon in the summer or in the fall, we go in June and September. You can do both of those tours. They're back-to-back. We'll take care of you Saturday to Saturday, or you can go one or the other of those spiritual heritage tours. The itinerary, the cost, everything you want to know about these trips, if you want to join us, is available at spiritualheritagetours.com. Spiritualheritagetours with an S.com. We go in June, we go in September. Those are the 2 best months to go weather-wise. And we'd love to have you if you've never been with us, or if you've been with us before and you want to go back. We would love to have you on those trips. What do you got for us, Steve?
All right,
got about a minute and a half.
Let's end here. No one's ever accused some people of being too intelligent. I don't want to cast aspersions on any particular genre of music, but rap gets a bad rap sometimes. It gets a deserved rap sometimes. I want you to hear a rapper. I'm not going to give her name because it's just too embarrassing, but this is what she's being interviewed by a white person on a podcast, and I want you to hear what this rapper says, cut 11.
What do you know? That you're a musician. But that's why I'm interviewing you today, so I can get to know you.
So I'm a musician.
Mm-hmm.
What that mean? Make magic or something? What is musician?
I think you're confusing that.
Yeah, I'm not no musician. I make music. I make music. And that's not all I do. I make music. I act. I'm a TV star, too, a young mogul.
Just really quick, I think you're confusing.
I'm not confusing nothing because you don't know. You thought that all I was a magician or whatever you said.
A magician?
That's what I think
you know what? Stop right there. If I were the person or the producer of that show, I would say, everybody's going to go back out in the hall and we're going to re-enter the room. We're going to start this whole thing over again because we're on a bad footing right here. Anyway, a musician.
She doesn't know what a musician is.
Well, rapping is its own art form, I guess you could say. It's
You're so kind.
Well,
yes, you are.
It's not traditional music. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
It's not music.
I've never heard a piano with a rap song. Let me put it that way, or a violin. But maybe I missed something right there.
Well, she's a magician.
So. A magician, a musician. What's the difference? All right. Hey, listen. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Fred.
You bet.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks to Chris Woodward, Alex McFarland. Still owes me a couple of things of peanut butter, homemade peanut butter. We'll see how that goes. He'll be on next week, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they'll be here by then. Our thanks to Brent Creeley. Was anybody else on today? I don't think so, right? We'll see you next time, everybody.
Spiritual Heritage Tours with AFA President Tim Wildman include a tour of Washington, D.C. and a separate tour of Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown with tour guide Stephen McDowell, president of the Providence Foundation.